let's jump into today's talk about Egnyte and Autodesk together. So transforming AEC's digital future sounds a little bit optimistic or ambitious, but I want to explain why these two platforms come together to actually be a powerful answer for AEC firms. We'll start with a little bit of context. AEC cloud growth is driving a lot of our needs today, so we'll start there. Then I'm presuming there's a lot of Autodesk knowledge on the call from the attendee side, and maybe not as much about Egnyte. So we'll talk a little bit about Egnyte and what we do here, and then we can dive into how they work together with Autodesk, Egnyte and Autodesk's platforms, and the specifics of ACC Connect, the integration that we have today between Autodesk Construction Cloud and Egnyte. So let's get started. I want to position AEC firms as data companies, which is probably strange language to many of you. It might feel like a stretch, but the reality is that when we are creating these built assets, and I mean the process of ideation all the way through construction documentation, through pre-construction, through construction, through commissioning and handover and operations, there's just mountains of data that are being created along the way and consumed. And in fact, across the operational life cycle of a building, you might argue that that data is as important as the bricks and mortar themselves. And so for a long time, the AEC industry hasn't really taken advantage of the data generated during design and construction. This is still a struggle. We face additional challenges around that data when it comes to data control and security. And today we're going to talk a little bit about this growth of cloud data, the platforms that we typically use, and how this can actually serve to benefit us. So something we see at Egnyte a lot because of the fact that we operate a platform in the cloud is the adoption of cloud data has only exploded over the last number of years, not because of the pandemic. You can see on this graph, for example, before and after the pandemic, we were seeing the same kind of growth. And the growth amounts to almost an 8-fold increase in cloud data usage over the last 5 years. That's pretty exceptional. It does happen for a number of reasons, positive, and then maybe there are a few risks or concerns to highlight. That's not the main focus today, but let's just touch on those so that we understand sort of both the benefits and the needs that come along with all of this adoption of the cloud. The one that almost everyone is going to be familiar with is cloud-based collaboration. I mean, we are so used to operating in kind of a global, unrestricted by geographical location, unrestricted by domain kind of mode that this is going to explain a lot of why we see cloud growth. But something you may not think about as much are the mergers and acquisitions that are happening increasingly across our industry. And often when, two or more firms come together, it's not 1 + 1 = 2, but sometimes quite a bit more as these different systems and sets of applications are sort of brought together. And speaking of those applications and systems and so on, everything we're doing is generating more data, as I've already kind of indicated earlier. Like all of the tools we have are smarter, and with that intelligence comes additional data that's being generated, being consumed, being stored somewhere along the way. And then we never see requirements from a legal or ethical data use standpoint going down, but only increasing. And I want to point out that these are all actually good things. Like we're achieving more, but it always requires more data. And so we're seeing this, explosion that I've talked about. And this is just among our customer base, the graph that I was showing on the slide, but that represents thousands of AEC customers. And this is available in our annual report. So what happens? They're both new needs or new, you might say new opportunities in the sense of what the cloud has enabled us to do, but then there are some new risks that we just need to be aware of. We talk about this a lot, so I'm just kind of hitting on a couple of highlights here. We're used to operating now as one global office, or if we're not used to it, we're able to operate today as one global office. And this is amazing. I mean, we can sit down and work anywhere in the world, often on almost any device, and we have the same exact results, and maybe sometimes even faster than if we were sitting next to someone with an old file server down the hall. And so we have this expectation that we're not going to be restricted in the way that we work, and especially where we work. But if we don't have tools, systems, processes in place that help us manage this, we can end up with many siloed systems and just data sprawl. So growth for growth's sake, as opposed to a strategy for how we handle the data that we generate. We also have more flexible collaboration, which may sound a little bit like the first one, but think about this as more the external rules. We're able to share things with anyone, and therefore be able to collaborate in near real time outside of our walls, or be able to access data that is not just about our office, that pertains to our projects, for example, at any time. And that's fantastic. However, we do need to be aware that we can end up with uncontrolled sharing, especially if we don't have capabilities in place that allow for that external sharing to be handled in a secure way and tracked and managed for all of the purposes that, legal and ethical, that we might need. And then another big positive benefit in a very different kind of vein is the ability to turn data into actionable knowledge. Now, this is where probably most of our heads are at today, where we're thinking about how do AI tools help us to do smarter things with our data, whether that's historical data or project-specific data. And we have the power to do that. Maybe for the first time, we're starting to see an explosion of this kind of data processing, if you will, or data engagement, the ability to ask your projects questions that you wouldn't have been able to ask before. But this brings new questions around data exposure and risk. And, are you checking a box to release your IP to the world before you even begin to use a specific tool? So we have a new kind of awareness we need to have as well about the tools that we use every day. So the cloud, the thing to take away from this is the cloud is enabling all sorts of new potential. And this is why we're willing to sort of take on some of these new risks, why we're seeing data growing so much, our dependency on data. But I use those slides mostly just for us to all acknowledge that the cloud is here to stay, right? Like we've probably already accepted this. And if we haven't, we need to think about it that way because of the fact that it unlocks our data for use across these major platforms like Autodesk Construction Cloud and Egnyte, and enables all of these new capabilities that we haven't previously had access to. So with the cloud as basic, fundamental premise, let's talk a little bit about why Egnyte is here, why I'm speaking about the things I'm speaking about, and then we'll move into this Autodesk plus Egnyte discussion. In a nutshell, Egnyte moves a business to the cloud. We are unified content management, content lifecycle automation, if you want to think of it that way, in a seamless turnkey platform that has been AI powered for over a decade. We came online about the same time as tools like Dropbox and Box, but we were never a free consumer tool, but rather an enterprise cybersecurity forward platform from the very beginning. Some of the highlights of what Egnyte does are captured in this graphic. And so I'll just use the graphic as a way to tour Egnyte in a very quick way. When I say comprehensive digital infrastructure, a place to run your business, we think about the sort of collaboration we talked about before, the one global office concept, being able to access your data anytime, anywhere, and from almost any device without a VPN or other restrictions in the way. Built-in content lifecycle automation, even this stuff is AI powered. So when you're thinking about retention, archive, deletion, policies, that's all sort of built into Egnyte. The understanding of what projects are versus just file folders, and being able to templatize project folders and permissions for those folders, and even basic workflows, such that Egnyte can be pathed to align with project ideas on other platforms like Autodesk Construction Cloud is important. Hundreds, like literally hundreds of built-in compliance protocols, whether they're legal standards or things like HIPAA or ethical data use standards and so on. CMMC2, if any of you do secure projects, things like this are just built into the platform. And remember, we come out of a horizontal space. I'll talk more about that in a second, but means we cover a lot of ground in terms of our policies. Secure link sharing. This is something not to take for granted, but the fact that we have full audit tracking of links and being able to share externally and understand, even who's accessing those links, or to sort of deactivate in one click all of the links at the end of a project that, have ever been shared, so that for the first time, maybe we actually understand how the content we're sharing has been shared throughout a project. And then while everything in Egnyte seems to be AI powered, and I'm half joking, but actually there's a ton of AI behind the scenes in Egnyte for a long time. One of the popular things is built-in threat mitigation. So whether that's behavioral detection for an internal user that decided to suddenly download a bunch of files and triggers a flag, or whether that's external bad actors. And so our built-in snapshotting and capabilities can help not only detect the threat, but then help get the company back online quickly. So broad picture of Egnyte, but this is the kind of stuff that you need to sort of be the digital foundation for your business. And many businesses use Egnyte. In fact, as I mentioned, we're across many sectors. We were horizontal for a lot of years. We didn't have vertical specializations. We do now, from AEC and financial services and life sciences, kind of our main vertical pillars, to media and advertising that's getting going, and others. Egnyte is has a very broad portfolio of companies, more than 22,000 companies last I checked, on all 7 continents. And as you see on screen, I mean, NASDAQ, Red Bull, large AEC companies like Balfour Beatty, even companies like BioNTech run on Egnyte. So a broad portfolio of customers using millions of end users using the platform around the world. And in the AEC space, there are thousands of customers too: architects, engineers, general contractors, specialty contractors, and owners across the world. So we see quite a range. I have customers even on my own technical advisory board that range from 5 to thousands and thousands of employees. But I love that we have this kind of diversity across the AEC industry and outside of the industry as our customer base. We have only been developing AEC as a vertical division for a little over 4 years. And so to have well over 3,000 companies currently using Egnyte and AEC is something I'm proud of. And I like to say often, I'll repeat this in a different context later, but I encourage customers to run their projects wherever they need, run their business on Egnyte. We do play with hundreds of business integrations, but more than 40 integrations specifically in the AEC space. Okay, enough about us. So Egnyte plus Autodesk, what does this look like? What are we talking about here? Why am I making the argument that these things are complementary? Well, let's start with something you probably know. I just want to state for the record, Autodesk is a global leader in AEC project software. They've been around for well over 40 years now, right? AutoCAD was introduced in 1982, became the #1 selling CAD application, the first PC CAD application in 1986, and it still is today. So they have a strong presence with the advent of BIM, and then the acquisition of Revit 20 plus years ago, and all of the work that Autodesk has done on sort of the ideation, creation, authoring side of the business for so long. And then while it's had a few names and there have been acquisitions and building going on, Autodesk has aggressively invested in construction for quite a few years now, building out a portfolio that may have started to grow with Revit Cloud work sharing and feature sets according to that, but has expanded greatly across the construction space in recent years. So Autodesk is a household name, at least among those who have ever thought about things like CAD or BIM. But no company solves every problem, right? Just as Egnyte doesn't, Autodesk's lane is very clear, and Egnyte does not offer design authoring applications, much like we find in Autodesk's portfolio of desktop and cloud applications. Autodesk is not a general purpose business platform or IT infrastructure platform, doesn't offer things like data governance in the way that platforms like Egnyte do. So we have different specialties, and I'll dig into that just a little bit more. Autodesk specifically makes tools that end users, the folks that are at the point of creating a design and executing a design, or at the point of construction and needing to communicate project work as it's being installed, will convey to each other and to their team leaders. Right, that is their strength. They really are, when it's the project lifecycle and execution of that project, then you think about tools like Autodesk software. Contrast that with Egnyte, where we're talking about enterprise business platform capabilities. So everything your IT leaders need, and then everything that you might take for granted. So the ability to support map letter drives, for example, so that your end users don't have to change their workflows with tools like Autodesk software, but rather they can simply execute as if they had a file server down the hall, and now do that anywhere in the world. But then all of the things I talked about earlier, from the threat mitigation stuff to data governance in general, and sort of all of the AI-powered capabilities behind that, and compliance, like all of those things are really strengths of Egnyte. So I want to emphasize that there's unique value here. There's overlap. Yes, of course there are. Like, you could store files in both platforms. Obviously, you can do secure cloud storage in a lot of places now, right? But that's what you'd think of as low value. Those things I was just highlighting, you can't just go find anything to do the design things that Autodesk does. Sure, there are some competitors, but it's a very strong software brand, right? And same thing for Egnyte. So they have unique lanes in which they are strong, but they're also highly complementary. Everything I just described, kind of drives home the point that they really operate separately in terms of their sets of capabilities. But because you can bring them together, you can achieve some things that wouldn't be possible in one platform alone, right? And then, fortunately for us, they're interoperable. So the fact that we can use a software that we'll talk about in a minute to bring them together easily is super important, because it makes all of these capabilities available to any single firm. So again, I will often say, run your projects on Autodesk Construction Cloud, run your business on Egnyte, because this statement is fairly succinct and tells you that they have different lanes, but also suggests that they work together. So keep that in mind as we move on to the next piece of this webinar. So leveraging ACC Connect. Now, I've spoken about this at AU before, in fact, co-presented with an Autodesker, because this story is important for all the reasons we've just been covering. First, the players here, there's three. Autodesk Construction Cloud, which, to be clear, is the whole portfolio of cloud applications. There is a unified platform within that most of you are familiar with: Docs, BIM Collaborate Pro, Build, etc. But there are other tools like Building Connected that fall under that brand of Autodesk Construction Cloud, and they're part of this integration discussion as well. And then there's Egnyte, our platform that we've just been talking about here for the last few minutes, platform for running your business. And then Workato, which we haven't talked about much today, but Workato is a low-code, no-code middleware, if you will, that helps with integrations across hundreds of platforms, including, of course, Autodesk Construction Cloud and Egnyte. There's a backstory to this. I'll get to that if I have a chance to talk about it, but both of Autodesk and Egnyte have had Workato-based integrations for some time. In the case of Autodesk's side of the integration, they have branded this ACC Connect, and it's either included or sold with purchases of Autodesk Construction Cloud products when you buy from Autodesk. But it allows you to log in to app.workato.com, which I hope to show here in a minute, and be able to configure, using these little widgets, recipes of information. You're stitching together a visual workflow that'll either use little modules or widgets from BIM 360 or from Autodesk Construction Cloud, which are fairly interchangeable in the platform, same code underneath both. And then go find third-party applications like Egnyte and pull those modules in. And it allows you to move data back and forth between platforms without having to know how to script it or having to access the APIs directly. The backstory I was going to tell you about was that Egnyte has actually been in partnership with Workato for a long time. PlanGrid was close with Egnyte and required, in fact, Workato to build an Egnyte integration before PlanGrid adopted Workato as their platform of choice. PlanGrid was later acquired by Autodesk and convinced Autodesk in general to adopt Workato as its Autodesk Construction Cloud platform, and hence Egnyte and Autodesk Construction Cloud talk to each other. This works bidirectionally. So it's as an example, most common example probably, is that a design side Autodesk Construction Cloud user, so let's say it's a Revit project using BIM Collaborate Pro, very common example, will want to have those Revit files available in Egnyte for one of many purposes, or maybe several purposes. Maybe they want to share with folks that don't have access to Autodesk Construction Cloud, either internally or externally to their firm. Maybe they have certain legal or compliance reasons why they need to put content in a place where that's managed automatically. And of course, Egnyte can do that. So they'll, pull a copy over for that purpose, or maybe they have some other kind of secure place they need to store content or information specifically for a given project. And so Egnyte can help them achieve that. So there's a very common use case might be anywhere from every few hours to once a day to have essentially all files and folders, in a certain part of a project, essentially backed up, if you will, to Egnyte. A different use case, completely different use case, going the other way. Maybe I'm doing a bunch of reality capture work using a Faro scanner or using Drone Deploy, and I have Egnyte set up as my backend for that. So I'm capturing all of this information, storing in Egnyte. Egnyte handles large files very, very well for a cloud platform. And then, at some point, I'm going to need to use that reality capture data or some portion of it on an active project. And so if that's the case, then maybe I'm pulling from Egnyte into Autodesk Construction Cloud, into Docs, basically when the project is ready to receive, or that phase of the project is ready to receive that information. These are just two basic examples. We can talk about more sophisticated stuff in a minute. And I'll show you one more completely unrelated to Workato. Let me show you one more thing that is possible in terms of this integration between Egnyte and Autodesk Construction Cloud before I jump over to Chrome and hopefully kind of just give you the visual tour. Another feature of Autodesk Construction Cloud's unified platform that you may be familiar with if you're a user are the various dashboards. So if you go to the account level and you can go to My Home, instead of looking at a list of projects, you can kind of see an overall account dashboard. You can embed what's called a partner card into that dashboard, and you might use that to visualize anything from job site cameras to maps of projects or whatever it might be. Among those capabilities, you could drop in the Egnyte UI. So we, of course, have a web portal, much like Autodesk Construction Cloud tools do, but they can be embedded. So if you want the user experience to be seamless, of looking like you're all within, sort of one UI, then that's easily possible. It's just web links. Could do it also at the project level in the Insight dashboard for a given project. Can even modify the URL so it's just showing the portion of Egnyte that's applicable to that specific project. You could also add secure upload links if there's, accepting of bids or something going on where you need to have files pushed out of ACC into Egnyte, but into a kind of a private container. These are a few examples. Partner cards are easy. This has nothing to do with Workato. It's just about the integration between ACC and Egnyte. So before I go any further, we're getting close to the end of the slide content anyway. I want to just jump over, if I can, to Chrome and kind of show you a little bit of what that integration looks like in terms of just general look, feel, and appearance. So let's try that. So right now I'm in Autodesk Construction Cloud. I'm at the account level, right? Just looking at my list of projects. But if I were to go to My Home, and my screen's over here, I'll be looking here a little bit, I might be dropping in a partner card into this dashboard. And I'm not showing one in this particular one at the moment, but here's where I would drop in an Egnyte UI if I chose to. I had one here and apparently I just deleted it. But anyway, it would show up in one of these widgets, and I could blow up the widget and just see the interface. It's a very simple URL wrapper, right? But if I go into one of the projects, and I have a project here up and running, two things. I'm going to look and see first if I still have a partner card. So let me go over to Insight. I do. On this one, I have a simplified version of the Egnyte UI showing only the content of this project inside of Autodesk Construction Cloud. So point again was just to show that you can operate as if it's just sort of one platform once you've got this set up. But if I go back to Docs, in this case, I've got a very simple recipe set up in Workato that will take, as I kind of suggested, like the content, I think every 24 hours is the way it's set right now. I had it set every 5 minutes, but once in a while it would fail for various reasons. So every 24 hours, I have it set up to push data over. Now, I used part of this for AU last year. So I've got some old models. If I go into models, architecture, forgive me if you're an engineer, and I look at the versions here, I have this history, but the last one I did was quite a while back, right? I haven't changed anything since November 2023 on this particular file in this folder. That's going to be important, that date. So just kind of keep that in mind. So November 4th of 2023. Now, if I jump to Workato, this is app.workato.com. I'm seeing right now the sort of branded interface. In fact, the bottom left, you can see ACC Connect logo. This is sort of Autodesk's UI wrapper for Workato, if I have access to it. But I'd be able to access widgets from kind of anything. I have a ACC project files to Egnyte recipe running here. You can see mostly very successful. I did have a few failed jobs, like I said, when I was running it super frequently. That's not a normal use case. You can do it on a trigger, like a publish as needed, so to speak, or maybe set it to every couple hours. Depends on how you exchange files. This I think of as more of like a nightly backup. And I'm seeing the jobs it's completed. I can go in and take a look at the recipe. And I won't go through all of this. There are some embedded recipes, like recipes that are nested. It gets a little bit sophisticated, but essentially what it's doing is on this trigger, it's looking at what's present in Autodesk Construction Cloud in a specific project. Even though you see I'm using some BIM 360 widgets, it doesn't matter. It's checking for this. It is looking then to see what's in Egnyte in the designated destination folder. And it compares to see if they are the same. And if not, then it will create the folders if need be, and subfolders and so on in Egnyte if they don't exist in ACC, or conversely, it'll remove the folders in Egnyte if they don't exist anymore in ACC. And then it will populate them with the current version of the content if the content has indeed changed. So it's a daily check to just make sure that what's showing up in Egnyte is what was pre-existing in Autodesk Construction Cloud in Docs. And if I click on just one of these, like this is the trigger, so it's probably the easiest one to understand. This is just saying trigger every day at 11 p.m. my time and go from there. And then you go into, pull from a specific place, right? And that'll be the source folder and so on. So each of these widgets is pretty straightforward to populate. You just have to be able to log into those accounts. And in some cases get like the secret ID that's accessible when you're inside of Docs, or the project ID inside of Egnyte. So that's Workato. That's the step that happens in the middle. And then the destination in our case here is Egnyte on this demo server we call Hard Hat. I have this project set up, this AU 2024 demo project with the same folder structure that I have in Docs. And it's the models folder in particular that I have mapped on that recipe right now. So if I go to the architecture folder, I'm going to see a really interesting version history. This shows today's date, September 19th. And there's a mechanism here that I find it useful, maybe quirky the first time I saw it. But at the bottom, I see November 4th, 2023, same date, stamp, and so on as we had over in Docs. Now, at one point in time, I didn't know this would happen, but I stopped the recipe and restarted it apparently on July 11th. And so I ended up with a couple of extra syncs in the middle that really are the same file, but show up as additional versions. And then I have something showing up September 9th, 2024. And one of the sort of features of the way this recipe is written is it just keeps overriding the timestamp of that file if there are no changes. So I always have a fresh version, even though it's actually the same file as I had back in November. But this is just showing you there's a little bit that I had to learn when I got into using the integration, but it works great. In fact, I'll be talking about this at AU, and we just pre-recorded our session. And when we did, one of the customers had stated that since 2022, they've had a 99.9989% success rate running an integration very similar to this across the tools, which I'll take any day. So I said, not really a demo, just a little bit of a tour so that you could see what it's like. It's really not that complicated, not rocket science. Now, I have done an exercise, and I can't really take credit for this. There's an Autodesker that Evart Foster, who's a subject matter expert for integrations, who's done some really sophisticated work in Mural This is a very small snapshot of this, but he's trying to think about what is in a visual way, what are all the touch points, to the API, all the connections that you can access with Workato, with ACC Connect as it's branded. And then what are the maybe good inputs and outputs for integrating with tools like Egnyte. So as an example, perhaps you're executing some kind of field workflow and you get to a point of needing a signature on it. And if you're a customer of Egnyte and have Egnyte sign, as opposed to some other integration, or even if you're using DocuSign or Adobe Sign, I guess with Egnyte, you could push the document over, make that your trigger, push the document over to Egnyte, have it signed, send a signed copy back to ACC so that whoever's working on the project knows that they're good to go, but also keep sort of a record copy that's been signed in Egnyte for legal reasons that goes to the appropriate place for accounting or whoever it needs to keep track of it. That'd just be an example, and one of who knows how many examples of where you might want the platforms to talk to each other. Now, if you're seeing this before AU, come to our session. We're going to be speaking about this, but also have our product team on stage because we are continuing to develop our capabilities around this integration. It's a really important integration to me and to our Egnyte team. And if you're seeing this after AU, probably you've already been hearing about some of that.